Hey everyone, it's Southern Bel Canto. Welcome back to my channel. I have yet another book review for you today, and that is The Perks of Loving a Wallflower by Erica Ridley. This was a 5-star read for me. I really did enjoy it. So this is sort of, I think, kind of new to the market maybe. It's a Sapphic Historical Romance, which I know there's been some written before, but this has really been at the forefront, like everywhere. Usually it's not promoted, sadly, and we're getting some great inclusivity, and I've seen it posted at Walmart's and Target, so that is awesome to see growth in the inclusive circle of literature. So yes, this is book 2 in a series. I didn't know that going into it, and I probably would have bought the first book just to have a better understanding of the characters as well as the writing. And it didn't really have spoilers per se, but it also didn't have spoilers, if that makes sense. So I didn't feel like I had to read the first book to read this, but I definitely think reading the first book would have helped, and it wouldn't have done a few spoilers. So this is yet again a Sapphic romance. It is part of a series, I believe, called The Wild Winchesters. Does it say that? The Wild Winchesters, yes. So the first book in the series is The Duke Heist, which is here, and then the third one coming out in the spring is Nobody's Princess. And it sort of follows the same archetype of other books, where I believe every book will be the romance of a what are they? The Winchester siblings. So they are adopted siblings. Kind of reminded me of the Boxcar Children. So they were, I'm not sure if they're blood related siblings or if they're siblings by adoption and they've sort of formed a new family. I wasn't fully sure of that. It might have gone into more detail in the first book. If you've read The Duke Heist by Erica Ridley, let me know if they are full-blooded siblings or half-siblings, or if they're just sort of siblings by forming their own sort of family and being adopted into the same family. I wasn't quite sure. I'll just refer to them as siblings because that's what they are, you know. But yes, this is a good book. This one featured Tommy, who is actually Thomasina, and Tommy is her nickname. And she is such a cool character. She is a master of disguise. I think she came up with a better name than Master of Disguise, but she is just wonderful at pulling off disguises. Like, I think it begins with her as disguised as a male pirate, and then you find out she's also masquerading as this older woman, and she also is a young baron that is trying to woo Philippa. So I found that really interesting. When I read the book and I saw all like Tommy in all of her disguises, I really thought of Tilda Swinton, especially when she was in, I think it was called the Grand Budapest Hotel, and she played like a 110-year-old woman. So there's a character that Tommy plays that is a very old like dowager woman, and it reminded me of like Tilda Swinton. And a lot of ways I got a really strong like Tilda Swinton vibe. When I read my books as if I'm watching a movie. So a lot of times when I'm reading, I picture characters as famous actors a lot of the times, and if I can't find the actor, then I picture them as their own sort of person. I kind of can create them in my head of what they look like, and I sort of, when I read, it's literally I see a movie in my head, which I think is fun. A lot of my friends don't read like that, so maybe it's kind of unique, but I literally have like a whole movie in my head, which I enjoy because I love movies. That's just a little bit of my movie collection, but I love movies. But yes, Tommy is a master of disguise, and I believe she met Philippa in the first book, and she is sort of awestruck, and all of her siblings sort of poke fun at her being in love with Philippa, who's sort of she's not necessarily the diamond of the ton in any sort of sense, but as they said in Legally Blonde, she's not completely misfortunate. So she's wealthy. She's very much an idealistic lady of the ton, but she doesn't want to be that idealistic lady of the ton. Philippa in a lot of ways, to me, felt trapped in her situation, even though she was, sort of blessed with money and class and, some freedoms. She didn't really have personal freedoms. She kind of was free to do some things, but she was still, kind of locked away by society and their standards. And so that was a really interesting juxtaposition. But the romance between Tommy and Philippa was very good. There was some stuff where Philippa wasn't quite sure Tommy was Tommy. And for a good bit of it, she still believed Tommy to be male. And it was interesting when she found out that Tommy was actually Thomasina and not a male heir Winchester sibling. It was this daughter. So that was interesting. There wasn't really a big blow up about that, which I didn't expect there to be, but I still would have thought she would have felt sort of betrayed, not in like a negative sense, but when you kind of like someone and then you find out they're not fully who they say they are, you might get a little miffed. And she was like, oh, okay. So that's how I read it. But I was sort of like, I think she would have been a little annoyed. And she was annoyed by some of it. It's more so that Tommy was the older woman at this like blue stocking reading circle than actually being female. She was more upset that Tommy was getting to see Philippa in like vulnerable positions and not in Philippa was speaking about things that she thought she knew her audience when apparently she didn't. So I should correct myself. She was more upset about Tommy sort of being in disguise and she not knowing about it. It was a little confusing. There was at one point where they were at a ball and I thought Tommy was Tommy, but I think Tommy was actually the Baron. Like she was in her boy drag essentially. And that was a little confusing because I think there was a scene where one of the sisters was curling Tommy's hair, and maybe at the time men curled their hair for like the balls. I wasn't quite sure about that. They probably did. I mean, the men at that time had like, well, a little bit before that, they had like the long curly wigs and the rouge and the powder and the heels. But I was a little confused about some of the instances in the book, whether Tommy was as Tommy or Tommy was in disguise as someone, whether that be the Baron. It was mostly if Tommy was presenting as the Baron or if Tommy was presenting as Tommy, especially in the middle of the section with Philippa. Once Philippa knew the whole deal, I knew Tommy was Tommy and she knew she was Tommy and all that. But there were some times I was just kind of like, is she presenting as the Baron? Is she presenting as Thomasina Winchester, aka Tommy? It's a little confusing, but I still enjoyed it. And there was sort of a subplot of a mystery, but I wasn't really invested in the mystery. I didn't really care about that as much. I really was more interested in the romance. And there was a little bit of ambiguity at the end. It seemed that Philippa never really came out to her parents, and she didn't really come out as going off with Tommy. There was some stuff that was a little confusing for me as the reader. Like at the end, if you've read it, it was just like she was going off and leaving her family home, and she wasn't going to get married, but it wasn't like she was going to go and live with a woman. So maybe they just didn't say that because it would have been, I don't know, the mother probably would have like been like Aunt Pity Pat and needed some smelling salt or something. But yeah, there was just some ambiguity that I as a reader had a little trouble with understanding, but it was still overall a 5-star read. I really do want to read the first book in the series, and the third book really seems interesting with the princess and all. I always like the royals. But this was a very good book. I would recommend it. It's The Perks of Loving a Wallflower, if I can say that, by Erica Ridley. It's $8.99. This is the max market paperback size, so it's a little bit bigger. It was fairly short. It's about 340, it was 346 pages exactly. But one thing I liked about Erica Ridley's writing was some of the chapters were really short. And I actually like that a lot, especially when you have two characters and their point of view. Because sometimes, especially with historical romances, those chapters can go on for a good bit. I've read one historical romance, and I believe one chapter was like 48 pages, which it's just a lot, it's a lot for one chapter, but some of these chapters are like 6 to 8 pages or 12 pages, and that was more enjoyable, especially when you're getting chapters where they weren't in two different point of views, but they kind of weren't also not in two different point of views. So like some chapters would be predominantly Philippa and what she was doing on that day and what her thoughts were, and some were predominantly Tommy, but they weren't like first person. But that was still enjoyable, especially when you're wanting to be invested in a romance. You like to get that point of view from both sides of the loves. So yeah, I did enjoy that. So yes, this was a 5-star read for me. The Perks of Loving a Wallflower by Erica Ridley. I have another Erica Ridley book novella that I'll be reading this month as well, in the Mistletoe Christmas, the Christmas anthology. And so yeah, and I just started another book last night. I only read like 3 pages, but wanted to get started. And that was When You Wish Upon a Duke by Clarice Michaels. And it's a retelling of Peter Pan. Well, Captain Hook is sort of his archetype, and she's sort of modeled after Tinkerbell. So we'll see how much it actually goes by the fairy tale, but it seems really cute and interesting. So yeah, if you're looking for a good historical romance, if you want a Sapphic historical romance, definitely look this up. I know another author, Kat Sebastian, is very popular, and she does a lot of Sapphic historical romances, as well as some MM as well. So if you want to give those a read as well, or if you've read them and if I should read them too, let me know. But yes, this was a good book. I think a lot of people will enjoy this. So as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. I love to interact with fellow readers on my videos. Please follow me on Instagram at Southern Belle Canto, and also on TikTok at Southern Belle Canto. I usually make some micro reviews on TikTok, and I also do some fun book reels and other book related content. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon. Bye everyone.